Thank you for being with us, for taking time out of your evening to spend some time celebrating Nostra Aetate. The approach that we're going to take is it's a sort of a gentle proceedings. It's not a high-powered presentation. You're going to spend a bit of time with some enthusiasts, and then I really encourage you to hold on to your questions for the end. So it's great if you keep your video on just for people that are presenting, so that we can see the whites of your eyes and hopefully the odd smile on your face as we move through. But if you could mute just in case we get some strange sounds coming through, and keep the chat open. You're very welcome to pop things into the chat as we move through. The proceedings for this evening, we hope to be finished within an hour. We'll start shortly with brief prayer, and then Bishop Michael will begin the formal operation. He'll actually give some reflection to get us underway, to actually set the tone for the meeting. Bishop Michael Dooley, of course, is on the Bishops' Committee for Interfaith Relations. We're very blessed to have him as a regular member of the group. And then the members of the team will very briefly introduce just who they are, and then talk to some elements of the interreligious dialogue promoting interfaith relations booklet that we put together a number of years ago and have revised along the way. And at the end, Q&A, and finally we'll finish with a blessing. So hopefully that all meets with your approval and is roughly what you're expecting. So let's just be conscious that for us, at this moment, wherever we are, this is sacred space. We gather to reflect on the presence of God in all that diversity, and we gather, many of us, conscious that it is our Catholic faith that orients us towards the presence of God in our world, and that for many of us too, we have this opportunity to engage with others who hold different faith beliefs. So we come to God conscious that God is great. He honore, he karoria ki te atua, he mangarongo ki te whenua, he whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Honour and glory to God, peace upon the earth, and goodwill to all people. I thought we'd just begin by connecting our prayer to the prayer of Pope Leo.
Lord Jesus, you who in diversity are one and look lovingly at every person, help us to recognize ourselves as brothers and sisters, called to live, pray, work, and dream together. We live in a world full of beauty, but also wounded by deep divisions. Sometimes religions, instead of uniting us, become a cause of confrontation. Give us your Spirit to purify our hearts, so that we may recognize what unites us, and from there, learn again how to listen and collaborate without destroying. May the concrete examples of peace, justice, and fraternity in religions inspire us to believe that it is possible to live and work together beyond our differences. May religions not be used as weapons or walls, but rather lived as bridges and prophecy, making the dream of the common good credible, accompanying life, sustaining hope, and being the yeast of unity in a fragmented world. Amen.
And so, joining the words of Leo, those beautiful words of sort of positive engagement, the Bishop of Rome connects to our bishop here in Dunedin in New Zealand. I hand over to you, Bishop Michael, to get us formally underway. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Kia ora tātou, and a warm welcome to you all. Thanks very much for joining us on the 60th anniversary of Nostra Aetate. It's the Second Vatican Council's declaration on the relation of the Church to non-Christian religions. And so tonight is an opportunity not just to commemorate a document, but also to reflect on a true turning point in the history of the Catholic Church and its relationship with the wider world. So just to understand the importance of this document, we need to go back to the context in which it was written. The mid-20th century was a time of deep global upheaval. The world and the church was in transition. In the wake of World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust, many in the Church, including Pope John the 23rd, recognised the urgent need for healing, reconciliation, and a new approach to interreligious relations, particularly with the Jewish people. Pope John convened the Second Vatican Council in 1962 not to define new doctrines, but to open the windows of the Church. And it was during this council that the seeds of Nostra Aetate were planted. Originally, the document was meant to address only the Church's relationship with Judaism, but as discussions progressed, it became clear that the Church needed to speak more broadly to address its relationship with all non-Christian religions. Nostra Aetate, the Latin title of the document, means in our time, and it was promulgated on October the 28th, 1965. It's a short document, but powerful, just 5 sections long. So I'll just go through the 5 sections. Section 1 opens with a profound statement that all humanity is united by a shared origin and common destiny. It emphasises the search for answers to the deepest questions of life, questions that all religions seek to address. Section 2 acknowledges with respect the truths found in Hinduism, Buddhism, and other world religions. It does not compromise the Church's belief in Christ, but it opens the door to dialogue by affirming the spiritual and moral truths present in other traditions. Section 3 speaks briefly but respectfully about Islam, recognising Muslims' devotion to God, reverence for Jesus and Mary, and the importance of prayer and charity. And Section 4, which in many respects is the heart of the document, addresses Judaism. It strongly rejects the charge of collective Jewish guilt for the death of Jesus and condemns all forms of anti-Semitism. It affirms the shared spiritual heritage between Christians and Jews and calls for mutual respect and understanding. And Section 5 concludes by calling for unity and love, not discrimination, and urges all people to work together to promote justice and peace. So in the 60 years since this document has been promulgated, the Catholic Church has made significant steps to building bridges with other faiths. This was seen in such historic moments such as Pope John Paul II's visit to the great synagogue of Rome and his interfaith prayers for peace in Assisi.
And talking about meat workers, they do the most.
Here, I'll put this on for you. Here.
We had a bit of dysfunction going on.
In today's world, marked unfortunately again by division, misunderstanding, and rising religious tensions, this document points us in the direction of continuing dialogue. It reminds us that dialogue does not mean abandoning our faith, but living it more fully with openness, humility, and love. So as we celebrate the 60th anniversary, it's important that we don't treat Nostra Aetate as a historical artifact, but as a living call, a call to encounter, to listen, and to recognise the face of the divine in our sisters and brothers who may believe differently than we do, but who's certainly the divine invitation to live in peace, harmony, and araha with one another as people of faith. So thank you very much, and that's sort of putting things into context. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bishop Michael. It's interesting to be reminded for us that as those that are on the committee, of how seminal this document was. That the sort of the power that it took to actually engage us to say it's okay to work with those of other faiths. Not just okay, but there's actually something to be learned from each other in this quest for peace and dialogue. And so focusing again on this, when the New Zealand Catholic Bishops Committee for Interfaith Relations began, and we're very lucky to have Sister Catherine Jones with us, she might say something at the end to sort of talk maybe a little bit about how it all kicked off. That document was very much part of what we focused on. And so to be sitting here 60 years on, the Bishops Committee was founded in 2009, in October of 2009. So it's been going for roughly 16 years to sort of reflect on how the document continues to resonate with what's going on, particularly in New Zealand for us. Just take a moment to read. So there's a small piece from paragraph 1 or from Section 1 and Section 2. Just take a moment to reflect on these words. And as Bishop Michael has so powerfully reminded us, that the words are as relevant today as they seem to have been when they were written back then. And this quest for what is true and holy in the people, those followers of other religions, is something that I think adds a whole lot of hope. Certainly those of us that have been blessed to sort of have conversations with other people and see, goodness, that the things that are going on with the world are not just in my own head. We actually share the challenges that actually come through, and religion, rather than always being seen or often seen in the media as a problem, is actually something that often brings the potential for healing, the opportunity for richness and dialogue. Pope Francis was very much engaged in the space, and in Evangelii Gaudium, he talked about interreligious dialogue as being a necessary condition for peace in the world, not just as an opportunity, but as a duty for Christians, as well as other religious communities. When he spoke to the young people in Rio in the same year, he highlighted the fact that faith can't be watered down. I just want to be really clear that as we sort of have this conversation this evening and this recalling of what Nostra Aetate means, there's nothing about Catholic involvement in interfaith where anyone wants that Catholicity to be watered down, that Christianity to be watered down. The myriad conversations I've had with people, they've understood me to be Catholic. They want me to be Catholic. They don't want me to actually have a conversation with, them as a Buddhist or as a Muslim or as a Hindu person. They don't want me to suddenly stop being that or pretend it's not important to me. Interfaith dialogue is a place where we can actually celebrate the flavour of our faith. In Sri Lanka, on the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate, Francis said this: "It is my hope that interreligious and ecumenical cooperation will demonstrate that men and women do not have to forsake their identity, whether ethnic or religious, in order to live in harmony with their brothers and sisters." And finally, just a wee quote from that amazing gathering between the Grand Imam and Pope Francis, where they produced the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. Faith leads a believer to see in the other a brother or sister to be supported and loved. So you may be aware that the Dicastery for Interreligious Dialogue sends out letters to various religious communities across the globe at particular times. And Diwali, which has only just been on the 11th of October, they sent a notice, a letter, a warm letter of recognition of this important time for Hindus, and included this text. While much progress has been made since Nostra Aetate, much more has to be done. In today's world where mistrust, polarisation, tensions and divisions are on the rise, interreligious dialogue is more necessary than ever. It must continue to sow seeds of unity and harmony, becoming a beacon of hope for all. Interreligious understanding and collaboration must find a place in our daily lives and become a natural way of living together. So many of you may already have come across the booklet that was originally published in 2012. It's our committee's booklet supporting particularly Catholics to engage with interfaith relations in Aotearoa. It's quite a practical document. It mentions a number of quotes from Nostra Aetate itself. It was revised in 2018 and we've only just reprinted it because we ran out of copies in 2025. So there should be copies near you. If not, please get in touch with me and I can certainly make sure you can find them. But it's also available online. All you need to do is a search for promoting interfaith relations in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and you will end up on the Bishop's site and there's a link to the document there to download. It's not very long, it's about 16 pages. What we're going to do as a team is to just unpack some elements of that and give you some examples of what interreligious dialogue, the shadow of Nostra Aetate, looks like in Aotearoa, New Zealand today. Very much aware that you will have your own experiences as well. By the way, I meant to mention at the start, You'll have noticed when you came in that recorder's on. We're not going to record Q&A at the end. It's really only just so that we have a record of what took place this evening. So please feel confident that there's no breaches of privacy, or you're not under any pressure whatsoever to have to contribute something profoundly meaningful so that it could be recorded for all posterity. Look, I'll kick off. You'll be getting sick of my voice, but there's a number of things that sort of are hinted at the start of the booklet. It sort of draws into, well, what does interreligious dialogue look like? I can vividly remember kicking off in this roundabout 20 odd years ago when I joined the Dunedin Abrahamic Interfaith group, which was formed shortly after the Twin Towers came down in New York, and the local mosque was being attacked by random people, and Muslims were not feeling safe on the streets, even though they had had nothing to do with that horrific event. And as I joined in that group, I was teaching at Kavanagh College, now Trinity College at the time. The response was made of this group joining out of care and araha for people that were being unfairly attacked. And there was not a lot of knowledge around what was going on, and people needed an opportunity to talk. And one of the things I realized was that the media that was talking about Muslims doing this, or this being done in the name of Islam, was a rhetoric around at the time. That it's actually impossible to have a dialogue with a religion. Religions are usually made up of thousands, millions of people. But it is possible to have a dialogue with a person, and that person's understanding of their own faith is often different. Just as one Catholic and another Catholic, if you interviewed me and my mother about what it means to be Catholic, I'm sure you would get quite different understandings. Both of them would show some elements of truth, I would hope. The other thing is that even though Nostra Aetate talks about celebrating that which is in common, which is terribly important, when relationships develop, in my experience within interfaith, within people who are part of other faiths, you start to actually share absolute opposing stances, understandings of God that are completely different, understandings of the divine, sacred texts and what makes the sacred texts important, what religious practices should look like, that are extremely different. And they can be done with laughter and with real enthusiasm. That's the stuff I love in interreligious dialogue as well, that sharing the common is important. But the next phase is often that sharing those amazing things that go beyond that without getting angry or upset, just being interested in the other. I've had a number of occasions where I've shared things from my own faith perspective that I thought the other person knew exactly. I mentioned the Gospels or something other, and Gospels, and I can't remember what the conversation was around. I'd trotted out a few parables, and the person said, "So, gospel? What's that?" So there was a chance to actually have a conversation around something that I thought was fairly basic. On the other hand, I've had many, many occasions speaking with Muslims and some Jews where they knew my scriptures a heck of a lot better than I knew them. We used to have this beautiful experience. Still happens. The Dunedin Abrahamic Interfaith group will visit schools, and so schools will make an appointment, and a Jew, a Muslim, and a Christian will appear in the classroom. Will come to the classroom to talk with Year 12 students, and I can remember one person, a young Muslim woman, who quoted Matthew and quoted Luke and quoted in the context of justice and the respect and love for one another, as well as the Quran. Wonderful. And the final part from me for this phase is I touched on it earlier, but it's so important that when dealing in interfaith dialogue, that you don't think that this means you have to be anything other than the religious faith of who you are. We had an amazing speaker speak at the Dunedin Abrahamic group puts on with the Otago University a peace lecture each year, and we had a woman who ran a chaplaincy training course as part of a university in the States. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but she said that they're training chaplains for Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, was all training together. Every one of them comes out with a stronger faith, their personal faith, through the dialogue with one another, rather than being sort of torn asunder. So that's it from me. I'm going to pass on to Adele Churchman now, who'll quickly introduce herself and talk about dialogue in everyday life.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Adele. I live south of Timaru and am part of the Christchurch Diocese. And I'd like to talk about, as Colin said, one of the important dialogues that are involved with interreligious relationships, and that's the dialogue of everyday life. That's how we encounter the other. It's not a dialectic. It's a dialogical dialogue where we listen and we encounter and we relate. And there are all sorts of ways that we might encounter people from other religious traditions. It could be picking up the children at daycare, could be through work colleagues, on sports teams, through cultural activities. And we live in a spirit of friendship. And this sort of encounter can take place in our own neighbourhoods, anywhere in the city, in the country, or as we travel. Sometimes we get to share at a deeper level our human problems and our preoccupations, which may lead to sharing religious beliefs and experiences. And as Catholics, we sometimes may follow this through and become involved in various regional multi-faith groups, such as the Auckland Interfaith Council. Or perhaps it could be an Abrahamic faith group, such as in Dunedin. There are many such opportunities for involvement in everyday life activities with various people of other religious traditions and having that dialogue. And as Colin will show us on the next slide, one of the things that the New Zealand Catholic Bishops' Council for Interreligious Dialogue does is to write letters of greetings to other faith traditions on the occasion of their major feasts. And these letters recall a variety of religious festivals that are marked in Aotearoa as well as overseas. The festivals remind us of the common ground that we share and often of the work that we do together in interreligious dialogue. In the letters, we give thanks for those in the religious communities throughout New Zealand and for their work. We offer mutual respect and solidarity, and these letters are peer reviewed. So we take a great deal of time and care as we write, prepare and send these letters. We send aroha, peace, as part of the letter. But what is also very heartening in this interreligious dialogue of everyday life is to receive responses from the various religious communities that we interact with. We don't necessarily send letters exactly the same each year to those of the same feast days. We vary that because there are a lot of religious traditions and feasts that need to be marked in New Zealand. Now you can see here on the screen some of the warm and heartening responses from a variety of traditions. There's letters here from the National Spiritual Assembly of Bahai, from the Bat Shalom Jewish community of Auckland, and from those members of the Muslim tradition. They're just some samples of the ways that everyday life encounters can touch people of other religious traditions. So I'll leave you just to peruse those for a moment or two, rather than read them out to you. But that's very much part of how we see the dialogue of everyday life and practice it as part of the NZCBCIR
Thanks very much, Adele. Part of this too is that we don't really publish the letters that come through. Often they come through out of personal connections through the interfaith committees and the likes that we come through, and it's we don't do it for for publicity. We do it because we care about the communities that we're connected to, and it's quite lovely. Once in a while, haven't we, Adele? We've started to get a few. The odd one that actually comes just out of the blue for Easter for us that we then share with the bishops to say, you know, we wish you well for Easter or when Lent's coming up, and unsolicited, which is lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa.
Yes, hello. I'm Teresa Fernandez, and I am the Hamilton Diocesan representative on the New Zealand Catholic Bishops Committee for Interfaith Relations, and I'm the Catholic representative on the Waikato Interfaith Council. So the next form of dialogue is dialogue of action. You can see some images here. I'm going to have 3 slides, but first of all, dialogue need not imply sitting down and talking. This is the typical idea we get. However, when we come together as people from different faiths to do something for a good cause, we are achieving the dialogue of action. So on page 7 of this booklet, the New Zealand Catholic Bishops booklet for Interfaith Relations, it is described that when Christians and others collaborate for the preservation of the environment and for the integral development and liberation of people, this is what is dialogue of action. And this is again written up in paragraph 151 of the final document of the Synod. In there it is stated, and that was just written in October 2024, the themes of the Church's social doctrine, such as commitment to peace and justice, care for our common home, and intercultural and interreligious dialogue, must also be more widely shared among the people of God. So page 7 in this booklet has got a lot of examples of what has happened in Aotearoa New Zealand with respect to dialogue of action. And I'd like to share with you 3 instances of where I had participated in this dialogue of action in my capacity as the Catholic representative on WIFCO and in the New Zealand Catholic Bishops Group. So the first slide that you see here, you can see it is Planting for Peace, annual Matariki multicultural tree planting. Although the statement is multicultural, essentially the Waikato Interfaith Council, the Multicultural Trust, and other organizations and the Hamilton City Council, they provide the tree saplings. And we go at Matariki time to this place called Waiwhakareke Natural Heritage Park and plant native trees. And this has been going on for a number of years. So if any of you ever come through Hamilton, please visit this place. You will see some beautiful native trees, and we hope the kiwi bird will come in there as well. So it is something that families, grandparents to grandchildren, such a lovely time out there planting trees. And Laudato Si also talks about looking after our environment, and we do it with people from different religions. The dialogue of actions, the second slide shows it's about music. So we have a choir, an interfaith choir that has come out of the Waikato Interfaith Council. And actually recently, this year, we celebrated our 10th anniversary. And it's really wonderful how we have evolved. When we first started, we used to sing songs like, You've Got a Friend, What a Wonderful World, you know, feel-good songs. Then soon, as we matured, we realized that we are all from different faiths and we are here because of our different religions and we want to be together. Let's sing one another's songs. So then we started singing. Each religious group will contribute a song, and now we sing songs from many different faiths. And so in celebration for our 10th anniversary, we had that Sacred Sounds. You can see the artwork is done by an in-house artist. And it was such a beautiful sharing of different sounds, sacred sounds from different faiths. And everyone felt it very specially. And maybe I'd like to read to you something that was said by a Baha'i participant. She said, "Thanks for the gorgeous music today and for enriching my spirituality." So exactly what Colin has been saying, we are not diminished, we are enhanced in our own faith when we share. And coming together, we see the faith of others, the closeness to God, the closeness to one another. That also inspires us too. So that was wonderful. So that's another dialogue of action. And by the way, we go to rest homes and we sing there and so on. And it's really wonderful sharing. And this third one that I'd like to share is something that was started by Baha'i women. They had this once a month, they gather, they have a theme, and Sohela, who is the organizer, you can see her on the right giving food to Women's Refuge. So she would have a theme, and she would have sometimes we have live music or songs to that theme, but readings and teachings taken from different faith traditions. They're very inclusive. So it is no more called Baha'i Women's Devotions, it's Women's Devotions now. And you can see people from so many different faiths. We have Buddhists, we have different Christians, we have Hindus coming, and of course the Baha'is. And what is really wonderful is that our next gathering in November is going to be at a mosque. A Muslim community bought or family had a farm and they built a mosque there, and they're inviting all of us there now. So it has sort of really grown, and it's so beautiful. Even after a hard day's work, I feel drawn to going and attending this meeting. It's in the evenings normally, even on a winter's night, because there's so much warmth and love, caring and sharing among the women. So, dialogue of action has very far-reaching effects.
Thank you very much, Teresa. And boy, don't you live it well there in the Waikato, the amazing things that you get up to up there. As similarly with Palmerston North, as we hand over to Nick Wilson.
O ngā mihi mahana o te pō te whānau whānui ko Nick Wilson toku ingoa. My name's Nick Wilson. I'm the Palmerston North representative on the NZCBC Committee for Interfaith Relations. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about the dialogue of theological exchange. This theological exchange expresses the idea of delving deeper into the aspects of God we encounter with religious leaders and scholars. This said, you don't actually need to be a faith scholar or an academic scholar in your faith tradition, but it is useful to have a reasonable grasp on your faith position so that you actually have something to say in a dialogue. And a dialogue I'm defining here is a back and forth conversation. When we enter into theological exchange, the dialogue does not presume that we are going to change our position or water it down, nor compromise our own faith. I find often this is an all too common mistaken thinking or assumption. Our theologizing comes from a place of curiosity and desire to learn, which is the whole precept of theology. Indeed, St. Augustine, Doctor of the Church, is known for saying, "The more I know, the more I realize I don't know." So in this way, as we dialogue, we come to a more profound understanding of the things that are important to not just ourselves, as we can begin to articulate those things, but also to people of other faith traditions. It's an opportunity to learn about the various practices and traditions and deeply held beliefs. This contributes to the notion of social cohesion, which is the idea that a society's members are connected and feel a sense of solidarity, belonging, and trust in each other and in institutions. It is therefore communitarian by nature. And as Teresa has already mentioned, an example of this is Pope Francis's document Laudato Si, which translates to our common home, which other faith groups engage with. They love it because for them, the care of the environment is an important tenet of their faith too. One example of this happening globally is the CICED organization, or the International Centre for Interfaith Dialogue, which focuses on theological exchange and offers a kaupapa or practical methodology for how to dialogue with people in other or of other faith traditions. As Colin changes slides, we'll examine this in the Aotearoa New Zealand context. The dialogue of theological exchange is happening in Aotearoa, and it's happening often. There are many interfaith groups across New Zealand: Dunedin, Christchurch, Wellington, Palmerston North, Hawke's Bay, Hamilton, and Auckland, and so on. And each faith represented in these groups invites other interfaith group members and others to their big and significant events in their respective traditions to have an experience of what actually happens, which invariably generates dialogue and new learning. And this is an example of theological exchange. In the seedbeds of academia, which are our universities, there are annual peace lectures that occur, and that gives space for people to consider that peace is a necessary precept for both now and our future. There are national interfaith forums that are held in different regions every couple of years, so that everybody has the opportunity to attend a local event and engage in the interfaith space. Let's look now, as we change slides, as to how you might engage in interfaith dialogue in a relationship of theological exchange. Well, a great place to start is in our Interfaith Committee booklet publication from the NZCBCIR committee, where you can find out what is religious dialogue, interreligious dialogue, and begin to understand religious diversity. That looks like this. Hopefully you've seen that around the place. And if not, get a hold of Colin. He's got heaps of copies. But also so do our committee members, so you can hit them up as well for some copies.
There's a pretty good picture on the bottom of the slide too there, Nick.
That's right. And of course, as Colin mentioned earlier too, it's online as well. You can begin to understand religious diversity, Catholic Christian responsibility to be people of goodwill, and the nuances of language that are vital in the interfaith space. In particular, it helps with key terms so that we can understand and engage confidently in interfaith activity. Like most things, interfaith dialogue does have a bit of jargon that's important to understand. We also have a Facebook page where we post updates from the Vatican Dicastery for Interreligious Dialogue, also known as DID, D-I-D. International news items with reflections or pointers and other general information and items of interest. Perhaps you can facilitate or animate or join a group that works in this space as it sits alongside our Catholic life in terms of our Catholic social teaching, care of the refugee and the migrant people, and indeed the broad makeup of the universal nature of our church, the clue of which sits in our name, Catholic. Kia ora.
Got it. Thanks, Nick. One of the things that you raise so well in that sort of concept, without you're not putting people off by saying, "Hey, look, you've got to know everything about your faith." You're rightly pitching. It's good to know what it is that your faith is about when you're talking with others in the midst of this dialogue that we're doing. But one of the subtexts that you might not be picking up on, people, is that we really are encouraging people to get engaged in interreligious dialogue as Catholics. One of the things that happens is that people are often a little bit interested in the background, but we look around ourselves as a team and thinking, gee, where are those others that are coming through? Where are the ones that are coming through that really want to engage? So there's a challenge and an encouragement out there to actually give it a go, see what it feels like for you, because there's actually lots of opportunity to engage within Catholic circles in this space as well, as Nick's already highlighted. Thanks so much, Nick. Let's head to the top of the country, Beate.
Kia ora tātou. My name is Beate Mattis, and I am the representative in Auckland. So I come to the meetings from Auckland, and I'm also a member of the Auckland Interfaith Council. At the moment, I'm the co-president together with my Hindu colleague. And I'm going to show you some pictures of dialogue of religious experience. And I like the quote by Pope Francis when he said, a key purpose of interreligious dialogue is to share the joy of one's own faith and encounter that of another. And so these pictures show a little bit of the joy, but also the commitment that we have to one another. So we have one series that is called Dialogue and Learning. That's once a year. We invite a keynote speaker on a topic that we decide with the keynote speaker. And then we connect, we sit together, we discuss, and we have usually food that is on a buffet so that we can get connected, and we change tables so that we socialize and discuss on and learn about one another's faith and about the topic. And then we have, of course, I was very pleased when I heard that Pope Leo in his inauguration mass already said, turning to representatives of non-Christian religious traditions, Pope Leo XIV said, our common path can and must be understood to involve everyone in a spirit of human fraternity. Today, he said, is the time for dialogue and building bridges. And actually, on the Auckland Interfaith Council, we often have that symbol of building bridges. One of the ways of building bridges is exploring sacred spaces. That's a series of events that's happening every year. We go to different places of worship. On this slide, you can see on the left-hand side, left top is the mosque in Ponsonby. Then next to is the Hindu temple in Balmoral. And on the bottom is the Orthodox synagogue in Grays Ave, which has now moved to Remuera. But you see, it's not just Catholics going to other places of worship, but it's people of different faiths going to people's to places of worship. So on the bottom, you can see it very clearly. You have our then Muslim representative looking at the scriptures next to him, right and left. Left is the Orthodox rabbi, and right is one of the members of that congregation. So you have Muslims meeting Jewish people, Sikh meeting Hindus, and so we are it's a human family, as Pope said. There's another example of exploring sacred spaces. On that year, we went to an Islamic center of the Daudi Bora Muslim community. They are a very small community. They have no mosque yet, but they have an Islamic center. So they were showing us pictures of their outreach. And then on the bottom, you see the Sikh community in a Gurudwara where they were preparing food that we were all sharing. And on the right-hand side, you see our Sikh representative with the Coptic Orthodox priest in the Coptic church. And in all these occasions, you can see that people want to share the beauty of their faith. And I think that's one of the parts that is so beautiful, that we are sharing the joy, and we like to share what we know about our faith and showing the community. This year was the opening of the new Temple of the Latter-day Saints in Manukau. And so we had, as a committee, we had a special tour, but we motivated anybody who would have liked to come and visit the temple, because the extraordinary thing is that the temple for the LDS temples are usually not accessible. and only when they are newly built or when they had done renovations. Like we went a few years ago, we went together to Hamilton before the temple was blessed again. But you see here also that this group is committee members from the Jewish community, the Baha'i community, Unificationists, and myself as a Catholic. And we go together as a group of friends and visit places and then take this message back. This is another event that we do regularly. We say sharing concepts. So one time we talked about gratitude or about pilgrimages, about care for creation, prophets and teachers. And it's amazing how much we have in common. So we have a theme that we think are pilgrimages, that's what we do. But actually, pretty much every faith has pilgrimages. And there are just differences. There are different holy spaces. There are different ways of going on a pilgrimage and different frequencies. And prophets and teachers, we were all asked to talk about like 5 minutes about a teacher or a prophet from our faith tradition. Some had somebody from their scriptures. I chose Elijah, and then the Jewish representative and some Muslims came to me, and they were so pleased that they heard about Elijah and were sharing what they know about Elijah. So as Colin said earlier, you never know what people know about our religion and how many similarities we're sharing. And through all these sharing of concepts and by going to celebrate with others for their celebrations, but also just to share our commitment, it is wonderful. And on the bottom picture, you see myself with my Hindu colleague, who were both chairing the committee. On his left-hand side, you have Reverend Prince Devandanan, who is the Anglican representative. He's Sri Lankan, so you have Sri Lankan, you have Indian, me as a German, and next to me is a representative from Scotland. She came to visit from Interfaith Scotland, where Interfaith Scotland is an organization, it's a charity, it's very well organized. And she said the events with us in the Auckland Faith Council were her highlights of her trip to Oceania. So we were very pleased, and we continue with the work, reaching out and inviting people to join us. And if any one of you would like to be on our mailing list so that you don't miss out any information, any events, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Beate. There's such a lot going on in Auckland, a lot with your leadership, of course, too. It's fantastic. One of the things that we perhaps haven't mentioned in this, what Beate describes, or what all the others have actually described, are religious connections involving groups and communities and individuals. One of the things that seems to be happening in the New Zealand context, and I'm quite heavily involved in Catholic education and do a little bit with the Ministry of Education in terms of curriculum development, is that often religions are conflated into culture. So often government organisations are very happy working in the area of culture, and they realise that some cultures have religious dimensions. What we do and what we live in interfaith is this awareness that in actual fact, religious traditions often cover many different cultures. In fact, pretty much always cover a range of cultures. So if you've met somebody from a particular part of the world that is primarily Muslim or primarily Christian, it doesn't really tell you anything until you enter into dialogue with them of what they might believe and what they might look like in their place. Thank you, Beate. Look, we're nearly done with the we're coming up to your opportunity to ask some questions, so please be thinking about that. The last part of the booklet to pick up is inner dialogue and prayer. I've just got a couple of points to make around it. Many wonderful things take place, many wonderful actual conversations take place, but also one of the profound things when one engages in this space is that something goes on afterwards in the quiet. Sometimes it can be that evening or in the shower the next day, and some thoughts are rolling through your head. Awareness sort of comes, and this dialogue that takes place is really important part of interreligious dialogue. It's this choosing to engage honestly and prayerfully with questions and inner struggles. It's not always easy. We're pitching a very positive picture because on the whole it is. But we don't want to undermine the fact that sometimes conversation can get quite difficult, and sometimes it takes a stepping back and a reconnecting to, and sometimes small moments of healing. The other thing in it is that often people that choose to engage in interreligious dialogue, it's often much more comfortable. You can fall flat on your face with people who are your friends. You can ask a question that might be offensive in another context. And sometimes it's important to have a little bit more, to be a bit more circumspect if that's not the case. But it all draws into one another. And the inner dialogue, this checking in with yourself and reflecting on what happens, is critical. It doesn't all just happen in the head. Much of it happens in the heart. When it comes to praying, because this is often a question that people ask, how can you stand next to a person who believes something completely different than you and pray with them? The reality is it can be challenging, but it's often surprising. One of the things that Pope St. John Paul II said way back in 86 was that praying together can manifest our respect for the prayer of others and for the attitude of others before the divinity. At the same time, we offer them the humble, sincere witness of our faith in Christ, the Lord of the universe. So the suggestions in the booklet are as simple as this: show respect and courtesy. You would do that anyway. Most people would. But just to be conscious that just being silent and respectful is often enough. I've certainly lived this on many occasions, allowing God to speak and inviting God to speak when prayer is taking place, particularly if it's something like the World Week of Prayer, and there's a prayer said in a language that I don't understand, from a context with which I'm not particularly familiar, to sometimes just in that, as that prayer is taking place, to ask God, what are you saying to me? What is it that you are saying in my heart now? How are you inviting me to respond? It's actually okay not to join in with all the words. It's okay to just be silent, to be just standing there and again that inner dialogue and thinking, I'm not sure I agree with that. I'm not sure that's something where my heart connects to the divine, but I can recognize in the person from the tradition that they are praying from that this is something that's meaningful to them. Being inclusive and appropriate if leading is important. This is a context where it might be an interfaith gathering. And to sort of, I've been at a couple of occasions where it's been led by, both times by a person from a Christian denomination, not Catholic. And the prayer has been, the grace before meals, for example, has been fully Christian, with very little opportunity for, a divine presence other than Christian, or a sense of gratitude other than aimed at Jesus, towards Jesus. And it's not that it's wrong. It's not wrong, but it can be inappropriate. There are other words we can use in our own tradition where we talk about our gratitude, where we talk about the abundance of the gifts that we have, that we share with one another, the opportunity to be at peace with one another, that can come from our tradition, but aren't actually exclusive of others. And finally, this was just, I can remember very clearly one time being asked at the end of an interfaith committee gathering. I was fairly new. I'd only been at it for a year or so. And they suddenly said, oh, look, we'll just have a prayer to finish, Colin, can you do it? I go, oh, sure. Oh, in the name of the Father. So, oh, and I stopped myself. And I remember this lovely elderly Muslim man, and he goes, it's okay, Colin. You can pray that prayer if you want. But it was, there's something beautiful about our prayer tradition that is utterly appropriate for us to pray. But sometimes we just need to flick a little switch in our own head to think, okay, let's actually not start up and finish with the sign of the cross in this gathering, because it doesn't actually speak and could potentially be a little exclusive. So look, a lot of talking. Hopefully the other voices have made it okay. We're close to the end, but we've actually set aside a good 10 minutes if people wanted to ask questions. To contextualise us again with the global church in terms of Leo and popes that have gone before, also acknowledging the significance of this. So this again is linked, this is an element that was linked to that prayer that I played at the start.
Let us pray that believers in different religious traditions might work together to defend and promote peace, justice, and human fraternity.
So as we finish this session celebrating 60 years since this amazing document was released, let's remember that religious dialogue will always be complex. It's not meant to be easy, but it's often phenomenally rewarding. We're called to encounter each other, seeking friendship in a spirit of love. This is a beautiful image. Was taken when the Dalai Lama came to New Zealand at the footsteps of St. Paul's Cathedral in Dunedin. I got to tell the young people that I was teaching at the time that the Dalai Lama came over to meet me. But it's a precious time. So again, before Bishop Michael gives us a final blessing, to draw again to the words of Nostra Aetate itself. The Church therefore exhorts her children that through dialogue and collaboration with the followers of other religions, carried out with prudence and love, and in witness to the Christian faith and life, they recognize, preserve, and promote the good things, spiritual and moral, as well as the socio-cultural values found among these people. So Bishop Michael, if you could conclude for us, please.
Thanks, Colin. And look, we'll just have a prayer of thanksgiving and blessing upon us. Spirit of love, source of all goodness, we give thanks for this time together, for open hearts, shared wisdom, and peaceful intentions. As we go forth, may we walk gently, act justly, and love generously. May peace be upon us, between us and within us. Shalom, salam, namaste, amen.